Orioles Hangout Talk. Terry Ford, 105.7 The Fan. Tony Penty, OriolesHangout.com. We talk a ton about the Orioles. We're working through the top 10 prospects that Tony Penty put together. Right now we are at number 4. And number 4, the highest rated guy you have in the top 10 out of all those trades Dan Duquette made. Whatever happened to him? Out of all those trades Dan Duquette made, here's your highest rated guy, Dean Kramer, pitcher that was in the Manny Machado deal.
Yeah, you know, I knew that was going to cause some people some heartburn because everybody knew Yusniel Diaz was the guy. This was the big guy. You know, Kramer almost seemed like an afterthought to a lot of people when the trades came across. But let me tell you right now, I went and watched this guy on multiple times through video, and every time I watched him, I just fell in love. I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to look for when I'm looking at a future starting pitcher. You know, he's built exactly like you want a starter to be. You're talking about a guy who has, you know, the fastball isn't a blazer. It's not the, you know, the 95 to 96. But he's a solid, you know, 91 to 94. He'll sit at 93, 94 at times, so it's not like he's just hanging at 90 and touches 90. No, he'll sit 93 at 94 sometime. There is some really good hop to that fastball, and this is what I really like about him. He misses bats in the zone with his fastball. And when I see guys doing that, that means there's some type of deception that's in there. There's something batters aren't picking up. He's able to take guys up the ladder. I've seen him take guys on the side and get swings and misses. So it's not just the same pitch every time he's getting strikeouts with. So you start there, and then you add in this hammer curveball that was getting strikeouts. Again, he's throwing this for strikes in the zone, getting swings and misses. So I now see 2 pitches that I can say look plus to me at times, and they're missing bats in the zone against AA hitters. Okay, AA hitters still are not major league hitters, but you start to get a general idea of what type of hitter a guy is at AA. So when they're pretty decent hitters when you get to AA. The fact he could do that already just really, really had me excited when I was watching him pitch. And then I went and started talking to scouts about him. I started talking about other people in the organization. And then you start hearing things about, again, we talked about the attitude. We talked about the intelligence. We started talking about the want-to. Every click, click, click. Each one of these things this guy has across the board. Again, really smart pitcher, really understands what he's doing, can read those bats, and that's why look at the strikeout numbers this guy had last season. This guy was striking out, you know, up to 14 point something per 9 when he was in A ball, and then when he came to AA, he was still striking out, I think, about 10 or 12. So it was. He's still missing bats. He's looking. The only thing that we want to see, the changeup is okay. It's not great. But there's a little bit of depth to it. He's starting to be able to throw up for strikes. And that's really the only pitch to me that will make the determination of whether this guy has a chance to be a really solid number 3 guy, or are we talking more of a number 4 guy. I think he's a starter. I think he's going to stick a starter. There are folks out there that think worst case scenario, this guy's going to be a fastball, curveball reliever, and they think there's more velocity in there if he goes to the bullpen. So instead of sitting, you know, 91 to 94, he might be sitting 94 to 96 with a hammer curveball, and that becomes a different monster in there. So we knew by putting him above Diaz that people are going to go, hey, what are you guys doing there? You know, what's happening? But we really wanted to just highlight how much we really like Kramer looking over this.
Well, I don't know if you see this in the video as you're watching, but his eyes are like twinkling when he's talking about Kramer. It's a little weird, but hey.
I hope it works out, because if not, I'm going to look really bad in this guy.
Oh, we're going to save
really
this.
Like this guy.
We will save this if he doesn't work out. And whenever you bring up a picture you get like this, we're going to go, run the Kramer tape really quick, please.
You know, actually, this is a great time for me to bring up. So another guy that works on this with me is a guy named Luke Seiler. And Luke is fantastic at doing this stuff. He's a great young man, really understands scouting as well. And I really was bouncing a lot of the stuff that I was seeing off of him, and he was just like, yep, I see it, I see it. So that's what really started rising him. When I first started, I think I had him around 7 or 8. And then we started talking about it, and we started really kind of liking when we were talking about what he saw in some other starts that he went to go see. I started talking to some scouts outside of the organization. I started talking to some people in the organization. And when I started putting the whole piece together, this was a guy definitely to get, if you're an Oriole fan, you should be excited about. It's in the system.
Now, can he be higher than a 3, or do you think a 3? If he's a good, solid 3, I mean, don't get me wrong, that's fine. Sure. But could he be more than a good, solid 3, or do you think a 3 is probably where it goes?
because of his pitch ability and because of his ability to read and miss bats with at least 2 pitches, if that changeup becomes a weapon against left-handers, all right, that's what's going to happen. He's going to have to get a little bit more fade, a little bit more drop on that. If he can get that going where it becomes a weapon against left-handers, well, now you start thinking, now you start getting really, really excited because now he has a weapon against them. Right now, I would say he's good against left-handers, but I'm not sure he has an exact weapon against them yet. That's usually what that changeup is for a right-hander. So that, to me, just like we always talk about, it seems like it's always the pitch, right? It's always that changeup, if that changeup develops. But from what I understand, again, reading up on him and talking to some folks, his changeup was really, really awful in the past. So the fact that we already saw it develop this year to a point to where you said, you know what, it's not a bad pitch. It's not. He doesn't have a great feel for it yet, but he's throwing it for strikes and he's got a little bit of movement to it. So again, if you say next year he comes back and that now pitch keeps developing, now I got a 3-pitch guy, and if you have a 3-pitch guy who has good pitch ability, smart, and can miss bats, now you start saying maybe he can be a number 2.
All right, so Dean Kramer at number 4 rather. Number 3, the highest rated position player you have in the Orioles system is Ryan Mountcastle. Now, Ryan Mountcastle, if you'll notice the graphic, we have third base question mark on Ryan Mountcastle.
But it's not really a question.
He's not playing third base.
He's not playing third base.
He's not playing third base, no. Unless you're going to put a cutoff man in between him and the first baseman.
No.
He's not playing third base because he doesn't have the arm talent to play third base.
No,
correct?
he doesn't have the arm strength. He doesn't have the arm action. There's nothing in there that suggests he can stay there. He's not a bad athlete. Now, I think sometimes when I start talking about him defensively, I think people take it the wrong way. They're like, well, this guy's going to be Trumbo one day, and he's going to do this. It's not. He's not a butcher out there. He's not a bad athlete. He's not a guy, you're a big lumbering kid that you're like, oh, I don't know why they're playing him there. It's just there's no arm strength in there. There's no carry to his throws. If he comes in, that quick release you need to be able to do to get that guy out, it's not there. He's never going to get any. So they would just, in the major leagues, they would just take such advantage of him that it would become a huge liability for him to be at third base. So this is another guy. We talk about Mike Elias coming in. This is a guy where I'm going to be very interested to see if they change how they were looking. Dan Duquette was a big proponent initially of playing him as shortstop because in his mind, he said he has more value as a shortstop. Okay? The problem with that, in my mind, is if no one else buys that he's a shortstop, his value doesn't keep going up because he's a shortstop. Because he's not a shortstop. You're playing him as shortstop, but nobody believes he was a shortstop. So they said, well, let's move him over to third base. Again, what they've seen now is that it just is not going to go there. And the arm action doesn't give you that impression that it's going to improve. It's a slow arm. There's just not a lot of things there. So he's a guy that's going to have to go either over to first base, or what I would do first is I would see what kind of value, put him out in left field. Let's see what he can do out there. I think he runs well enough that he'll run side to side. Let's see what happens out there because he has more value as a power-hitting left fielder than he does as a first baseman because it's easier to find first basemans, right? We already have
16 of them.
We have 16 of them and one that makes $20+ million a year who they can't get rid of. So so the fact is that this is a kid that I would put out in left field next season. It's going to be really interesting to see what Elias does when he comes in and whether that makes that switch this season.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dan Duquette thought he was a shortstop, but he doesn't have the arm to play third. So again, you're a scout. I'm just a schmo that watches games while I drink wine coolers. I don't think if you don't have the arm to play third, you don't have the arm to play short.
Well, so realistically,
you still need a good arm to play short.
You need a good arm for both, but shortstop actually is their best arm because it actually has the longest throws. People don't realize
in the hole,
that. Right. The throws are much on average a longer throw, and it takes longer for the ball to get there, so you need to have a much better arm. So shortstop is where you need absolutely the best arm in the infield. We saw that with Manny Machado. That was one of the things when Manny made the transition last season that we knew the arm would play there, right? There was no doubt in anybody's mind that Manny's got an amazing 80 arm. When you watch him over there, his thought was how well was he going to move laterally, and it was a little bit of a struggle at first, and then he got a little bit better as he got more time over there. Manny was a very smart player defensively. I know we saw things that happened in the playoffs, and he was punching guys flags or whatever he was doing, pulling guys' hair when he walked by.
He shivved the guy at second base.
I'm pretty sure,
crazy,
it was nuts things that he was doing out there. But when it comes from intelligence of watching what Manny Machado did, you always knew he was going to be able to play up the middle in my mind because of his intelligence about how he did everything there. And again, this is not always what we see with some of these young players coming up. So again, it's not that Ryan Mountcastle is not an intelligent player. I wouldn't go as far as say that. What I would say is that I don't think that he can stay on the dirt, and I think he's probably best up. There's guys that even think his arm action wouldn't work at first base, although others say, well, how many throws does a first baseman really need to make? Right. You say that until you get that ball that gets hit in front of you, and you got to turn that 3-6-3 double play. And when you can't make that throw, how frustrating is that when you see a guy blow that throw? So there's something to be said. Chris Davis is actually very good at that throw. It's one of the things that Chris Davis does well.
All that money.
That's exactly why they did it. They said the
3-6-3
double play is amazing. But again, why we have Ryan Mountcastle there? The bat. The bat's special. The bat's special. And he's a 21-year-old kid. There's nobody in the system has more impact possibility with that bat. We're talking about a kid who has that 30 to 40 home run power when it all settles in. Last season, the home runs weren't great there, but the average came up, and the plate discipline was something he was working on. You saw more walks last season. You saw less strikeouts. That was something the Orioles asked him to work on. So that's kind of why I'm not too concerned that the power numbers came down a little bit last season. A little bit less doubles, and the home run rate wasn't where you may have hoped that it was going to jump. Next year, it'll be 22. Most likely he's going to be up at Norfolk. Now, Norfolk is traditionally a place that sucks power, right? So, again, don't be too concerned next season if Ryan Mountcastle gets there and all of a sudden those home runs aren't going there again, okay? They're going to come. If this guy doesn't hit for power, I'll just go ahead and give this up. Okay, I mean, that's
you heard that one too, right? You got that one on tape.
Now, I didn't say if he doesn't hit in the major leagues because a lot of things still can happen. But if he doesn't hit for power, the way the ball, he's one of those guys. When the ball comes off the bat, it's special.
It's different. Like Manny, when you first saw Manny, you knew it was different.
Yeah, it is definitely similar. I would not say Manny Machado level because Manny Machado is just one of those guys, once in a lifetime type guys. When you see, he's probably the only guy I've ever seen when he was 19 years old that I was like, that's a surefire all-star major leaguer. I mean, never seen ever a guy that I ever was like, there's no way that misses. Right. If that misses, I don't know what happened. There's no way. It was just everything worked, and he was just an obvious thing. For Ryan, one of the things for him was developing, be able to hit spin this season. That was something he improved upon. That was something he needed to improve upon this year in Double-A. If you looked at his numbers, were very poor when he moved up to Double-A last season. This year, you saw the average come up. Mm-hmm. He worked pitchers much better. So those are all the things you want to see from a young hitter. So hit-wise, this kid's going to be a bat in the major leagues. He's going to be a middle-of-the-order hitter. He's the kind of guy that you should be excited about for that. The question mark is going to be very consistent. Where is he going to play? It's not going to be third base. But if it is, then you're going to see a lot of people bunting down third base line.
And you will see the Orioles deploy a cutoff man between first and third for
That'd
Ryan
be pretty
Mountcastle.
interesting. I'll never see that.
Hey, trailblazer, Mike Elias. Telling you. All right, let's go to number 2 now. 2 young starting pitchers. Let's start off with the guy in the 2-hole, Grayson Rodriguez, first-round pick last season for the Orioles, 18 years old. What do you thought? Right now he looks like a major leaguer. He's built like a tight end. Dude's huge.
Yeah, he's 6'4", I think 220, 230 already. This kid's already built like a horse. He was a really fast comer through his high school season. He was a kid that started off, if you read a lot of the reports, they kind of had him as a low first-round pick, and then things just started clicking for him. As the draft got closer, people started going out and seeing this kid, and he was rising up almost every draft board. So when the Orioles were very excited to get him, and when they got him, as soon as he got him into camp, it was pretty clear that this kid is more than just a young kid with just a live arm. He doesn't know. There's some pitchability in this kid already. He already kind of understands what he's doing out there. There's some intelligence to him. We talked about, again, for an 18-year-old kid, that's something you don't always hear about when you first show up. You don't. I've heard lots of things. Oh, the maturity level is, again, they're 18, 19-year-old kids. Right. Okay.
Remember you at 18, 19?
Yeah, I'm sure my scouting report would definitely have something about the immaturity factor would be in there. So, it's very common for me to hear that, but everything I kept hearing about this kid was just the opposite. Very understanding what he's doing on the mound, understands who he is, understands what he needs to do, what he wants to do. He's very willing to take coaching. He's very willing about doing a lot of things he needs to do. He's got the stuff. I mean, you're talking about a kid, again, 91 to 94 already, okay? Good movement on the fastball, hammer curveball, working on a slider, has a changeup. Now, remember, when you're this kind of guy in high school, you don't need a changeup. Okay, this is why we talk about this pitch all the time as the pitch it needs to develop, because they don't need it in high school. And sometimes they don't need it at low level of the minor leagues, which is why you don't want to keep these guys in the GCL too long or in the New York Penn League too long. You want to challenge them because you want to make them try to learn to use those pitches, because the one thing people need to understand is these guys know all about stats. And no one, no matter how many times you tell a young man, this is all about development. Right? It's only about development. We don't care what the results are. We just want you to work. We want you to throw 20 change-ups. And you know what they do? They get to the mound and they go, you know what? I'm going to throw 20 change-ups today. I'm going to throw 20 change-ups. And then they get 3-2 with somebody, and they're like, this would be a great time for a change-up, but you know what? I know I can strike him out with a curveball. Or I know I can strike him out with a fastball. Or you know what? That's my fourth pitch, so I'm going to go with one of my best pitches. So it ends up being that their competitiveness sometimes will hold them back. And this is why good coaching, good development systems will ensure that their catcher needs to understand that you are going to call an X amount of these pitches. You better figure out the good times to do them. By the end of the day, these are going to have an X amount of those done, because you have to force these guys to develop. Make sure they know that it's not all about the numbers up there. It's about developing these pitches, because clearly you're going to need a changeup when you get to if you're going to be a major league starter. And if he's going to hit his ceiling, which we have a very high ceiling on him, is a 65, which gets in that number 2 starter range. So his ceiling is a guy who definitely could be one of those guys.
And did Dan Duquette think Grayson Rodriguez was a shortstop too?
He did not.
Okay, just checking. I'm just checking now. I've lost a lot of confidence in Dan at this point.
Good, you can, because he's no longer here.
So I can say that now. All right, we get to our number 1 prospect on Orioles Hangout, Tony Pente's top 30 prospect list. Not a shock here at all. This is not a stunner. People aren't going to go, wow, really, Tony? D.L. Hall, who had a great year in 2018, the first round pick from 2017, the lefty, is your number 1 prospect.
So how does a 19-year-old kid, left-handed pitcher with a 94 to 95, sitting 94 to 95, a guy who touches 97, a guy with a hammer 79-mile-an-hour curveball, a guy who already was starting to show a changeup, and a guy who started, I believe he gave up something like 3 earned runs in his last 10 starts once he started figuring it all out. How would you like that guy in your system? Because that's what the Orioles have right now in this guy. We put a 65 ceiling on him, which is a number 2 starter. This is the one guy I would say right now that he could come out next year, and you may see him on our list again next year, and he may be a 70. This is how good this guy could be, and a 70 is a number 1 starter for us. Remember, if you get to an 80 level, you're talking about a Hall of Famer right level. Again, I'm not going to call a Hall of Famer at this stage of the game, but what I am going to say is, man, did this kid improve. You're talking about a kid, we talked about these raw high school kids that show up. And when he showed up last season, he was kind of that raw, hard-throwing, didn't really know where it was going kind of guy. And you got to give credit. There's a lot of people that are down on the Orioles development system, and they talk about how they didn't do that. And there's some merit to some things. I'm not saying that they're perfect at everything, but this is a great story of a kid who was developed very well. The things they worked on him with, and he's got an edge to him. It's right on the border of being cocky, but not overly cocky. So, and that's a good thing. You want to be the guy who goes out on the mound and has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. This kid knows every team that passed on him. Okay? This is the kind of kid that knows this. And he goes to the mound, he wants to stick it to everybody. He thinks he should have been 1-1. He should have been a first overall pick.
Nice.
This kid has every desire to be what it is, and he learns. And he goes from one step, and he makes mistakes. He comes back the next time, he doesn't make that mistake. And that's why you saw last season, his last 10 or 12 starts, in Delmarva were amazing. You can go back and look at the numbers. They're fantastic, and I know Baseball America has been doing this for years. They made him the #1 prospect in the entire Sally League. So this is the first time the Orioles have had a prospect in that's kind of a #1 guy in a long time. So probably since Manny Machado. I have to go back and check that for sure, but I think Manny Machado was probably the last one. So,
Caleb Joseph wasn't?
No.
Okay, I'm
no.
just checking.
Pickle my boy Caleb. Caleb, I love you. Don't listen to him. You're an amazing guy. You're going to be a manager one day.
Oh,
Don't
I
listen
agree
to
with
him.
that. Caleb Joseph will be a manager one day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You might put up a 550 OPS again, but I'm not going to get on you because Caleb Joe's my guy. But no, everything you got to like about this guy. I mean, he's got all the stuff. He's got that want-to, and what you hear about folks is he's got that it factor. Mm-hmm. That guy, when he gets to the mound, he strides to that mound. The scouts set up in their seats, and the people start watching, and they're like, this is a kid. This is a kid I want to say I saw at this level because he's going to be in a major. As long as he stays healthy, this is a kid's going to pitch a long time in the major leagues.
Okay, let's take where DL Hall is. Again, he's 19. I mean, so this is projecting a bit for you.
Sure.
But we looked at Dylan Bundy. We looked at Kevin Gossman. Even to a point of a Hunter Harvey. Mm-hmm. Eduardo Rodriguez was always #4 out of the 4. And he had some injury stuff and some weight things or whatever. Compare DL Hall as a prospect and the ceiling you see at this point to when you looked at Dylan Bundy or Kevin Gossman or Hunter Harvey or even Eduardo Rodriguez when they were in the minor leagues at this point.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that Kevin Gausman, when we first saw him, now remember, we were at a different stage. When I saw Kevin Gausman for the first time live, he was a college guy, right? So you got him at a different level than when you're seeing high school kids. So I can't really compare what Kevin Gausman looked at 19 compared to DL
Let's
Hall.
go Bundy, because Bundy was a huge prop. Remember, there was YouTube videos of Bundy, and he was a horse in Oklahoma, and he's squatting 1 million pounds.
Throwing 97, 100, 99
Let's stick with
miles an
Bundy.
hour.
Compare Bundy at 19 with DL.
So here's one of the things that the difference that I see here is that when Bundy showed up, again, all the accolades, everything he talked about, one of the best. I think what somebody said was one of the best high school pitchers he'd ever seen. It was all these accolades that came in there, and then he showed up, and he came out there and he threw kind of hard, but then the velocity started falling off right off the bat, right? So he wasn't 97 to 99. He was 93 to 95, and then he was 92 to 94, and he had the good curveball, and there was things you liked about it. But then I went down and go see Bundy, and the one thing I never loved about Bundy, and it's one of those things when you do this, okay, is that you have to have the cojones to be able to go out sometimes and go against the grain. And sometimes I do. A lot of times I do. I'm not afraid to do it. But sometimes I go, I must be seeing something different than everybody else. And the one thing I always said when I saw him was I thought his fastball was straight. Okay? I was like, it's his fastball straight. Okay? And I'm worried about straight fastballs.
Yes,
right?
they get hit.
And then I started seeing his fly ball numbers in the minor league, and they're rising balls on him. All right, and when you start getting guys hitting fly balls in the minor leagues, that's not a good sign. Okay, and when you, of course, in the major leagues, it's definitely not a sign if you pitch in cam yards, which we've already seen from Bundy since he's been at the major league level. He's given up a ton of home runs, and that fastball's still straight, by the way. So I didn't have enough cojones back in the day to say what I really did see. Okay, and so now when I look at DL Hall, what I see is I don't see this guy's got a hop to the fastball, which is a little different than what I saw with Bundy. This is a ball that has a little explosion at the end. It's not a big arm side run guy, but you get this little hop in the end that really gives it just this bite. And that's something you need if you're not going to have a tremendous arm side run or sink to it, okay? You got to have that late explosion hop to it that you see there. This is what this guy has. He also saw the guy that he showed up, 91 to 94, and now he's throwing 95, 94 to 90. The velocity's going in the other direction as he's getting older. That's what excites you, not to mention he's left-handed versus right-handed. But when you start seeing a guy whose velocity is increasing, you're seeing these strikeouts with not just the fastball. He's not getting guys to chase curveballs in the dirt. He's throwing hammers in the middle of the plate, not in the middle of the plate, but in the plate and getting guys to swing through it. It gets you excited. And it's just a matter of, again, we talked again, what is that fourth pitch? And he throws a little bit of a slider now. He's working on that. Sometimes it gets slurvy on him. He's working on that. So what you have to look at now is, can his changeup develop? Can that become a weapon for him against right-handers? Willie, I mean, I think all starters need that. So that's a pitch that is really going to determine his ceiling. Okay, if everything comes together, he's got that 1-2, he does that. This is a guy that we're looking at. He's a top of the rotation guy.
He's a 1. Haven't had one of those this century, Tony Penty.
So here's
this
why.
Century.
So you're right, and the last one we had was basically Mike Mussina.
Mike Mussina.
And even with Mike Mussina, as good as he was, he probably is a number 2 when you look at overall really what.
Well, he wasn't Randy Johnson, Greg Maddux, the guys.
Number
in
1
his
is
time.
that dominant guy. He's the Justin Verlander. When his days are on, you can't touch him.
Right.
Randy Johnson, when he was on, you just went packed it in. You're not going to touch him. Those are ones. Those are so rare that it's hard to say what those guys really are, and they have a different level to them. Trust me, if he's a number 2, I don't think he's going to be upset because he'll be a very rich man, young man for a long, long time if he's a number 2 starter. So there's nothing. Don't take that as a negative. That I'm not saying right now that he's a 70 or he's a number 1. He very well could end up being that guy. Okay, but I think right now it's better to say his ceiling's probably a number 2, and if he ends up being a number 3 or higher, the Orioles should be darn glad because there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. So the number 1 prospect for Tony Penty and Tony Penty's top 30 on Orioles Hangout, D.L. Hall, 19-year-old starting pitcher. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to shut her down because, well, the shine on our heads are probably causing seizures. So we're going to shut this episode down. We're going to come back our next episode. We're going to look at the top 30 a little bit from 11 to 30. Tony's going to talk about the high risers, the fallers, maybe a couple of guys he likes to maybe one day be in this top 10. That's our next episode. Terry Ford, Tony Penty, OriolesHangout.com talk. Thanks for hanging out with us.